When people bring up the idea of trap games or teams not taking an opponent seriously, my first instinct isn't to look at the team as a whole, but rather to focus on the individuals within that team. Because here's the truth. Every NFL player, no matter how comfortable their spot might seem, is in a constant battle for snaps, for relevance, and for their job. And on a Thursday night in Cincinnati, as the Steelers prepared to face a struggling Bengals squad, that reality couldn't be more obvious. It's not just about winning or losing anymore. It's about who wants it more on an individual level, who's out there treating every snap like their career depends on it. Because in a lot of cases, it absolutely does. Now, let's get this part out of the way. Yes, the Steelers are sitting at the top of the division with a strong 4-1 record, while the Bengals look like a team on the verge of spiraling. But that doesn't mean the Steelers are walking in with some sort of cocky swagger, ready to coast. Actually, it's quite the opposite. This isn't your typical 4-1 team where the starters are etched in stone and the depth chart barely moves unless someone gets hurt. Mike Tomlin's Steelers are leaning into flexibility. They're leaning into competition. They're leaning into in-game meritocracy. And that's why this game, this very matchup, matters so much for the guys who aren't just trying to win, but trying to prove they deserve to be out there in the first place. Let's look at the outside linebacker position. Against the Browns last week, the Steelers didn't just roll out the usual suspects and call it a day. They introduced 12 defensive starters. 12. Why? Because Tomlin wanted rookie Nick Herbig to be introduced with the starters. That's not just a symbolic move. That's a message. And when you see the snap counts, it's even clearer. Herbig had 50 snaps. TJ Watt had 49. Alex Highsmith had 47. That's not a fluke. That's a deliberate rotation. And it's not just about keeping guys fresh, though on a short week, that's certainly part of it. It's about rewarding performance. It's about giving snaps to the guys who are earning them. It's about building a culture where everyone knows their seat isn't guaranteed. And look, it doesn't mean they suddenly see Herbig as better than Watt or Highsmith. Come on, TJ, Watt is a generational player. But what it does mean is that the Steelers are creating an ecosystem where no one can afford to let up, where every player knows someone behind them is hungry and ready. Watt himself has even gone on record saying he loves the rotation, that it allows him to go full throttle when he's on the field. That's the kind of mindset that keeps a defense dangerous all year long. But that competitive fire isn't limited to the edge. Take a look at the defensive line. The snap counts there tell an equally fascinating story. Keanu Benton led the way with 49 snaps. DeMarvin Leal was right behind with 48. Cam Hayward had 43. Then you've got guys like Armon Watts, Braden Fehoko, and even rookie Isaiah Loudermilk getting double-digit reps. That's not a group being managed with a top-heavy mindset. That's a full-blown competition happening every single drive. And if this were a playoff game, yeah, maybe Cam Hayward would be on the field for 55 or 60 snaps. But this isn't the playoffs. This is the regular season grind. And the coaching staff is using this time to see what they've really got in the room. There's a simple truth to all of this. You can't take a snap off when you know the guy behind you is dying for his chance to make a play. And that energy? It's contagious. It forces players to bring maximum intensity regardless of the opponent. There's no space for underestimating anyone when your own spot is being challenged week in, week out. That's why I don't see this game as a trap for the Steelers. Not with this kind of internal pressure pushing every guy on the depth chart to earn their minutes. Not with roles shifting constantly and nobody being allowed to settle in and relax. Flip to the offensive side, and while the structure is a little more traditional, especially on the offensive line, there's still a current of competition running through that group too. The O-line starters are locked in. All 5 of them. Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, Broderick Jones, Zach Frazier, and Isaac Sumalo played all 59 offensive snaps against Cleveland, only stepping off the field for the final kneel downs. And yeah, maybe some fans would argue that left tackle still isn't fully settled, but for now, that unit is solid. It's the rest of the offense where the battles get real. Let's talk tight ends. Darnell Washington was on the field for 47 snaps. Jonas Smith had 41. Pat Freiermuth saw just 21. That's a clear sign that roles are being reevaluated. That's not a snap distribution you'd expect if there was a clear number one guy. No, that's a group of players pushing each other, driving production, and making sure that when the ball comes their way, they're doing something with it. Nobody wants to be the tight end that drops the one target they get or misses their blocking assignment, because that could be the last look they get for the night. The running back room? Same energy. Jaylen Warren is the number one, no question. But did he get the most touches last week? No. That went to Kenny Gainwell, who, despite playing 11 fewer snaps, found himself more involved in the passing game. Caleb Johnson even got in there for 11 snaps and carried 6 times. Now, outside of one solid 9-yard run, there wasn't a ton of production from him, but that doesn't mean he didn't feel the urgency. He knows the situation. He knows he's in a battle every time he steps on that field. That's the kind of edge that keeps teams sharp, especially in matchups where the opponent might look weaker on paper. And then there's the ever-rotating carousel of wide receiver too. Roman Wilson made a catch, or to be more accurate, had a pass thrown his way. But is he the one taking over Calvin Austin's role? Or will it be someone like Scotty Miller, the vet with more experience? Maybe Ben Skowronek sneaks into the mix. That's what this coaching staff is watching in real time. They're letting the game decide who earns the role. And when that's the atmosphere you're walking into, nobody's thinking about whether the Bengals stink or not. They're thinking about how many reps they can win, how many opportunities they can seize, and how they can prove they belong. This internal competition is what defines the 2024 Steelers so far. And more importantly, it's what might allow them to sustain this success instead of peaking early. When you've got players across all 3 phases fighting for time on the field, not just in camp, not just in preseason, but every single week of the regular season, that's when you know your roster has real depth. That's when you know your players aren't coasting. Because when you're Keanu Benton and you've been in the coach's doghouse, you can't afford to jog through a play. When you're Pat Freiermuth and you've gone from being a key piece in the passing game to the third tight end in snap counts, you can't just show up. You have to dominate every route, every block. When you're someone like Nick Herbig getting introduced as a starter for the first time, you know exactly what that means. It's not a pat on the back. It's a challenge to live up to it. And when your top stars like TJ, what are all in on the concept of rotating, of keeping the room healthy and high motor, that says something about the culture being built. And it's not just the young guys or the players fighting for roster spots who are fueling that fire. Even the veterans are buying into this mindset because they know that nothing is handed to you in this league. Every position is under constant evaluation, even if that evaluation isn't public. Coaches are watching film every single day, breaking down who's finishing their blocks, who's chasing plays from the backside, who's sticking to their assignment even when the play breaks down. And when you see things like snap counts shifting week to week, that's the visible evidence of that behind-the-scenes accountability. You can take someone like Darnell Washington. Big expectations were placed on him coming into the season, especially after the flashes he showed last year. But he's not being gifted anything. Jonas Smith has come in and carved out a serious role. Not because of politics, not because of seniority, but because he's producing. That's the type of message that ripples through a locker room. Everyone feels it. And when Freiermuth, a player who was once the clear number one at that position, sees himself trailing in usage, it only heightens that sense of urgency. It's not about entitlement. It's about execution. And whoever shows the coaching staff they can get the job done, they're the ones getting on the field. The same goes for the quarterback position, even if that's been a sensitive subject in Pittsburgh all year. When Russell Wilson got a shot earlier in the season, it wasn't part of some long-term plan. It was a matter of necessity. Justin Fields had gotten hurt, and the staff had to pivot. But when Russ stepped in, he didn't just hold down the position. He played smart, decisive football. He took advantage of matchups. He threw with purpose. And most importantly, he moved the chains. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. And for a stretch, it worked really well. That's coaching. That's Arthur Smith putting these guys in position to do what they do best without asking them to be something they're not. Think about Fields. Early in the season, he looked like he belonged. The mobility was there. The arm strength was there. The decision-making was better than people gave him credit for. And there were moments, like that loss in Indianapolis, where he looked like the only guy keeping the offense alive. That wasn't by accident. Smith crafted the offense to fit his skill set. He didn't try to force him into a box or treat him like some wildcat project. He let him be a quarterback, and Fields responded. Now, when Russ came in, things shifted. He didn't have the same mobility or the same physical upside. But what he had was veteran poise, touch on deep balls, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. And again, Smith adjusted. He built the scheme around Russ's strengths. He leaned on play action. He leaned on the moonball to George Pickens. He simplified things when he had to. That's the mark of a good offensive coordinator, being able to pivot and keep the offense functional no matter who's under center. And that brings us to something really interesting, a pattern that might have flown under the radar if you weren't digging through the numbers. A friend of mine ran some research on quarterbacks who played under Arthur Smith across his coaching career. 7 different starters, from Ryan Tannehill to Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and the trio in Pittsburgh, Fields, Wilson, and now Aaron Rodgers. Before joining Smith, those quarterbacks had a combined win-loss record of 26 wins and 46 losses. Not exactly sparkling resumes. But under Smith, that group posted a collective 55 wins and 42 losses. That's a massive swing. And after leaving Smith, they dropped back to 27 and 34. Sure, wins and losses aren't everything when it comes to quarterback play. But that's a trend. That's real. That's not just coincidence. Tannehill's resurgence in Tennessee was widely credited to Smith's offense. Matt Ryan had his moments late in his career under Smith. And now, in Pittsburgh, we're seeing a similar effect. Fields looked more composed. Wilson, despite his struggles with arm strength, looked more in control. And now Rodgers, fresh off a devastating injury, looks like he's playing more freely and with more confidence than he has in years. And Rodgers hasn't been shy about giving credit. He's spoken repeatedly about how this scheme has helped him rediscover certain aspects of his game. He's been more accurate. He's been more mobile. He's taking more shots downfield. Even his ability to move in the pocket looks sharper than it did last year. That's not just health. That's preparation. That's coaching. That's a quarterback who feels like he's part of a plan that makes sense. When you combine that with a defense that's playing fast, fresh, and aggressive thanks to all this rotation, you start to get a picture of what this team is becoming. They're not just talented. They're smart. They're adaptable. And most of all, they're hungry. Because every time someone steps onto that field, whether it's the first drive or the fourth quarter, they know their reps are being tracked, evaluated, and compared to the guy right behind them. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL rumor mill is buzzing. And if the whispers hold any weight, the Pittsburgh Steelers might have just pulled off a seismic move in the offseason. Sources hint that BUDDA, one of the league's most versatile and hard-hitting safeties, could be suiting up in black and gold sooner than fans dared to imagine. While the front office remains tight-lipped, insiders claim that Baker's arrival would instantly transform Pittsburgh's defensive identity, providing a leader on and off the field who commands respect the moment he steps into the locker room. For years, the Steelers have been hunting for a true defensive anchor, a player capable of orchestrating the secondary, making instinctive reads, and delivering bone-rattling hits that change momentum. Enter BUDDA, whose reputation as a fearless playmaker precedes him. Known for his uncanny ability to read offenses before they develop, Baker has repeatedly been described by teammates and rivals alike as the kind of player who makes everyone around him better. If the rumors prove accurate, Pittsburgh would be gaining exactly that, a seasoned leader who can elevate a defense that has struggled to maintain consistency against the league's elite offenses. The timing couldn't be more intriguing. With a roster in transition and several young defenders needing guidance, Baker's potential presence could serve as both a stabilizing force and a blueprint for discipline and intensity. Imagine him calling coverage adjustments at Heinz Field, barking instructions to cornerbacks while delivering highlight reel tackles. Steelers fans might finally see the type of defensive swagger that defined past dynasties. Of course, nothing is set in stone, and the league is notorious for throwing curveballs in the final hours of free agency. But if even half of these rumors are true, Budda Baker in Pittsburgh isn't just a signing, it's a statement. The Steelers' defense could transform overnight, turning heads and making opponents rethink every passing play. All eyes will be on the front office in the coming days as fans speculate, debate, and dream about a defense led by one of the game's most dynamic safeties. For now, the whispers continue, but one thing is clear. If Budda Baker really is headed to Pittsburgh, the Steelers' defense just gained a new heartbeat, and the rest of the league should take notice. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.